Anyway,
ADHD
ADHD at its finest. God bless. You think you'll grow out of it. But you won't. Because unless you're going to grow out of your brain, you won't.
You think you'll grow
I still honestly truly think like maybe
it'll get better.
Maybe I just need a little more time. Let her cook. Just a little longer. She'll get there.
That's going on Patreon. Oh man. Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the You Are a Severance podcast. I am here with my lovely co-host, Rodnesha Green.
Hi, y'all.
And I am Kali Thomas. And this is another Between Floors episode. Today, I think, is the long-awaited. Have people been waiting for it? I mean, we suggested that we do this episode a while ago.
Yeah.
I think a couple people requested it.
Yeah.
But today is the day that we are going to do our director / cinematographer breakdown and spend a little more time with the episodes that were directed and shot by not our main director and cinematographer.
Which is, if you don't know, Ben Stiller and Jessica Lee Gagne.
Yes.
Just to clarify, you know.
Which, oh, sad news. We just recently got that news that she is not coming back for season 3 as DP. The article, she did say she has not fully ruled out future work on Severance. So my hope is that means she's going to guest direct a couple more episodes, right? And then I was thinking today, if she does, then we can do another round of this after season 3 and go back and look at Chikai Bardo and whatever future episodes she may direct and do another little dissection with her. But it made me really sad to hear that she's not going to be the DP.
It's also the fact that like her and Ben have worked together for so long, and and you know it's not going to be like the end of their working relationship. But I actually went back and re-listened to her episode on the main podcast.
Yeah.
And he just seems so excited for her to jump into directing. So
yeah, and it makes sense. Like this was her debut. Like of course she's gonna want to take time to go do more.
He even asked her at the end of the episode, like, do you think this is just the beginning of your directing? Do you think you'll come back to do more? Or actually, I think he asked, like, now that you've done directing, do you think you'll go back to doing cinematography? Or do you want to keep doing more directing? And she even said then, like,
yeah,
I actually, now that I've done it, I do have more things that I want to do and more ways that I want to kind of get my work out in that arena. She's like, but I never say never, you know, cinematography will always inform what I do. These are her words, and how I direct. But, you know, I won't ever rule out going back to doing cinematography. So we'll see.
I feel like we're going to see, you know, a bunch of indie art house films from her.
That seems like her jam. Which side note, I don't have it. Dang it, my phone's like way over there. Okay, remind me at the end of the episode. Or we can talk about it offsides. There's a movie she mentioned that has Donald Sutherland and Helen Mirren, I believe, from like way back when. Now I can't remember the name of the freaking movie because my phone is not on me. But she said that that's a movie that kind of really informed her visual aesthetic.
The Leisure Seeker?
No, it's like a one-word something.
Oh, this is Donald Sutherland and Helen Mirren.
Did they do something
Maybe
else
they've
together?
worked together.
Movie? This is going to bug me. Okay. It's something that either starts with an S or a K or an SK. You know what? What if it's not even these two people? Oh, yeah. Okay. It's not Helen Mirren. Just kidding.
Oh, psych.
It's Jane Fonda and Donald Sutherland.
Oh, that is so funny.
It's called Klute. Klute.
Oh, okay. I have heard of Klute. Yes.
Okay. I have not. So
I have not watched it, but I've heard of it.
But this is all to say that this was a movie that she name dropped that kind of informed her visual aesthetic outside of like French films and
makes sense
stuff. Yeah.
Because she's very much like, and we saw that especially towards the end of this season, very much like 70s film.
That definitely seems to be her and Ben's like vibe. They definitely like a good throwback to that era of filmmaking. So yeah, Klute. If any of you guys know it, shout us out. Let us know what you know about it. Maybe we'll do a little something about that movie. But anywho, what's going on with you? We're matching today. Did you notice?
I noticed when you got on. I was like, hey, this is not purposeful. Nice. A little sage green action happening. It's very calm and very relaxing.
It is.
Some would call this a millennial green, but At this
Oh
point, we've
no, is
got
that what it
millennial
is?
gray and we've got millennial blue. Like, how many colors are we claiming, and
All of
why
them.
do y'all want to hate on our colors?
All of
Why?
them. They hate us because
Um,
they ain't us. That's why.
truth, truth.
And whatever. These kids today like gray all the time anyway. So who cares?
It's so funny because I had the same thought. There's this woman right now who has just recently discovered that she is colorblind through TikTok because she was taking a picture of her couch to give away to somebody, and she was advertising her blue couch. And the woman she was speaking to on like Facebook Marketplace or something was like, "That's not blue, that's gray." And so she took to the internet to make sure that she wasn't crazy and her stuff was blue. And let me tell you, it's hilarious because the series of things that she thinks are blue
Oh
that are actually
no.
gray is long and extensive.
I mean, well, at least you figured it out.
Yeah,
Apparently,
it's
TikTok is
been
helping a lot of people figure out a lot of things in a
it's
lot
been
of
a joy to
ways.
watch.
Who knew? Who knew?
Well, anyway, we were going to talk about something else, but I feel like we filled our banter
We
time.
did. Although I do want to just shout it out. We don't have to
Yeah,
go
we
into it.
can.
We went and saw probably one of the best musicals I've seen in a while. We went to see 44, the Obama musical,
Hmm.
this past week, and boy, oh boy, was it a good time. It was
The unofficial, unsanctioned Obama musical.
unsanctioned. Thank you. I kept trying to figure out what the other un was. I would tell people, I was like, the unofficial, unapologetic. Nope, that's not it. Unasked for. I don't remember. Anyway, unsanctioned Obama musical. It is sadly leaving LA soon, if not
Yeah,
this
tomorrow
weekend.
is the last day. Yeah,
Yeah,
as we record this, by the time this airs, it'll be
yeah.
long gone.
So
But it's going to Chicago next. Like the run is like sometime in August through September. So if you're in that area,
if you're a
highly
listener and
recommend
you're
it.
there, please do yourself a favor. It's a good time.
It's so good.
A good time.
It's so good.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess let's get into this week's episode.
Woo, let's do it.
All right, y'all. So, on today's episode, Between Floors, we are revisiting the series with a fresh lens. Get it? Yeah. This time focusing on, focusing. You put a lot of puns in here. I don't think you meant to, but
It was late at night.
Mhm. This time focusing on the visual storytellers behind the camera. While Ben Stiller and Jessica Lee Gagne have been the primary creative force guiding the show's signature style, we're taking a closer look at the other directors and cinematographers who have stepped up throughout the series. And we're going to discuss the different things we notice, what patterns emerge, what unique touches they bring, any and all things that kind of catch our eye that we kind of notice across different episodes that seem kind of signature to them.
Right.
So, the directors and cinematographers we are going to look at today are Aoife McArdle, Uta Briesewitz, Samuel Donovan, and then our cinematographers are going to be David Lanzenberg and Susie Lavelle, not Matt Mitchell. Are we not talking Matt Mitchell?
Well, so here's the thing. The breakdown is interesting. So for our guests who worked on season 2, they were kind of paired off. So Uta
Mm-hmm.
Brezowitz and David Lanzenberg worked on 2 episodes together, and then Samuel Donovan and Susie Lavelle did 2 episodes together. While Aoife McArdle directed 3 episodes in season 1, and Matt Mitchell worked on one of those episodes, and Jessica Lee Gagne did the other ones.
Yeah, I was going to say what's interesting I saw on the IMDb is that he was listed as a cinematographer and Jessica Lee Gagne was listed as DP on that episode. So they both were
Yes.
in that category, and I
Yeah.
don't know how that we'll talk about it, but I'm curious how
Yeah, I
that
don't, I wonder if he
affected.
was like assisting her
Yeah, I don't
or
know. I don't know.
yeah.
Very
Um,
curious billing. Yeah, so that's who we'll be talking about today, guys. Do we want to just jump into it?
sure. So I started with season 2 because that's more fresh, right? And then went
We
back
can work
and did
backwards.
season 1.
It's
So
kind of interesting going that
so
way. We'll talk about why, but yeah.
so okay, so our first duo is Samuel Donovan and Susie Lavelle. So instead of like recapping the episodes, I mean, we'll do that as it's necessary when we talk about our notes from it. We're going to tell you a little bit about each person. So Samuel Donovan is a British television director with a distinctive visual style and a strong record for genre-bending storytelling. He made a name for himself directing episodes of the UK cult hit Utopia, which was praised for its bold cinematography and unsettling tone. This makes sense to me in these 2 episodes. His credits also include the sci-fi anthology Humans, and the supernatural thriller The Enfield Haunting, as well as a crime drama called Liar. Across these projects, Donovan has shown a talent for building tension and crafting psychologically rich narratives, skills that have made him a sought after director for ambitious, high concept television. Makes since he
Yeah.
worked on Severance.
Yeah.
So then Susie Lavelle is an award-winning Irish cinematographer known for her emotionally rich and visually striking work. And she won a BSC award and an RTS Craft Award. I meant to write what those stood for, and I didn't. For a show she worked on called Normal People, and earned an Emmy nomination for Sherlock: The Abominable Bride. Her credits also include His Dark Materials, love,
Mm-hmm.
Doctor Who, World on Fire, and A Discovery of Witches. And so Lavelle brings a distinctive cinematic style to both intimate drama and high concept genre TV, consistently crafting visuals that deepen character and atmosphere.
This makes a lot of sense. You know what's funny?
Yeah.
I read these bios when I was doing my notes, but I don't think I processed how they relate to the episodes they were working on. I was just like, oh, okay, that's good to know. That's good information.
I mean, this one stands out the most to me, and I'll say why once we like go through it all, but then I went back to it and was like, oh, I feel like they specifically looked for these people for these episodes.
Absolutely. All right. So the two episodes that they did together were Goodbye, Miss Selvig and Trojan
Mhm.
Horse. So we'll start with episode 2, Goodbye, Miss Selvig.
Yeah.
One of my favorites, honestly, now looking through the entire season. I mean, season 2 is a great season, but Goodbye, Miss Selvig was a good follow up to a very banger episode 1. So,
Yeah. Agreed.
all right, what did you catch in your viewing?
Um, well, I see you have a note about like establishing mood, and I think the first thing that caught me, plays into that definitely, and it's that when we see Dylan walking out, the way Kier's head is lit, the big head out like
Mm-hmm.
in the lobby, everything is shut down. Lights are off. I think you see one person off in the distance like vacuuming or something, but Kier's head stays lit constantly.
Yep.
And I just I that immediately grabbed me as like the grandioseness of Kier, right?
The all-seeing eye of Kier, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
Definitely sets the mood in the beginning.
for sure. I mean, you tonally get it from jump. Like basically, kind of like you said, my first note was just like mood, tone is darker, creepier, and they show that
Hmm.
through the way they're kind of like sneaking into these moments. So nothing just starts stark. No one's just like
Yes.
entering a room all like business, dot, dot, dot.
Hmm.
Like even just the opening shot of Lumen, it's like it just kind of slowly pushes in towards the building. And then,
Yeah.
like you said, we see the slow trek of like Dylan ascending the stairs from the severed floor. And even the
Hmm.
way they set that shot up, it's like static in a spot where when he arrives, it isn't like centered on him at the top of the stairs. It's like he almost moves past
Right.
that spot and you just see his feet walking away. And like
Right.
the way James goes into the room to meet with Helena is like it isn't like he just storms in.
Hmm.
He slowly moves in and
Yeah.
slowly leans in and slowly reacts. And it's just so, like you said, tension building. And so again, reading that bio up top, I'm like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Everything that's being done just in this
Hmm.
cold open is all tension, tension.
Yeah. And I think the darkness is held throughout the whole episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the hallway scene with Helena is very dark, and like where it is lit is very intentional, like following like
Mm-hmm.
somebody's in trouble as they're like
Mm-hmm.
on the way to meet with Cobell. And then the way Milchek visits all the various houses to fire everybody.
Yep.
It's at night, so it's dark, obviously, but it's dark and like he approaches very ominously to each one of them.
Exactly.
He's
Yeah,
like kind of
the
like the Undertaker coming to snatch him up.
the one thing I found interesting too was the use of wide frames
Hmm.
in these establishing shots or these scenes or these moments that are happening, and the way it kind of establishes either a trajectory or a pattern, right?
Hmm.
So they would have the wide of like Helena and Milchik talking, and I found it so interesting that it would stay in one spot and they would move away from that fixed point, right?
Yeah.
So you see Milchick kind of going on the vertical and Helena going on the horizontal, and it almost again plays into these characters what their goals are as
Yeah.
characters, right? Like Helena's trying to move horizontally along the line of like integrating with the innies,
Mm,
being seamlessly like moving across the line without being detected. Whereas Milchick is all about going up, right? He's trying to take this
yeah.
opportunity to move upward and onward. So I just found it
Mm,
interesting the way that even a shot can kind of give you a clue
yeah.
about these people and their paths. And all throughout, you kind of see Helena and Milchick as like two sides of a coin because they're always like one is coming in when the other's going. One is going
Yeah.
left when the other's going right, but they're always coming from the same point of origin. And I just found that very interesting, the way they conveyed that with the shots.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there was another thing, wide shot moment that stood out to me with that.
There was not in the same way for me, but the wide shot where they first enter to talk to Cobell, and Cobell is teeny tiny at
You did mention
the
that. Yeah.
edge of the frame, like the vanishing point lines. It's so funny because the way the table is and the way the lights on the ceiling are, it reminded me of like learning about vanishing points in art class, and like specifically the examples that they use are like buildings that have like hard lines so you can actually like see the lines versus like when you are if you're painting a landscape, you're imagining where the lines are. The lines aren't actually there because they're not like hard like that in nature. But this
Mm-hmm.
is like the table lines and the ceiling
Yeah.
lines and the wall lines all lead to her. But she is still the focus of the shot, right?
Yep.
So she's purposefully in focus, but she's purposefully tiny. Like
Yeah.
she's about to get her, you know, just desserts or whatever,
Right.
and she's tiny and she's in trouble compared to the other times when we see Cobell in the foreground and we get the same lines. Like we can see when the perspective changes and it's Cobell and Helena in the front and Mr. Drummond is back there,
Mm-hmm.
like they're still the focus, right? Like everything else is blurry, but we get in that for first shot we get this forced perspective where
Yeah.
everybody is in focus but
Yeah.
she's tiny.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool.
It is, that scene is so interesting to me because one of the first things I noticed with them being in a conference room, I was like, it's dark in here. And if anyone has been in a
Hmm.
corporate conference room, those rooms are bright as hell. Like
Yep.
it's white
Yeah.
light all over everywhere. Like there's no
Yeah.
shadow, no one's hidden, no one's did that. So again, the way that they have structured this lighting to do storytelling for you to say like, uh-oh, ooh, like, and then
Hmm.
even the way even the way they kind of had the direction the lighting was coming from, I noticed at different points, Helena was better lit and Cobell was still kind of like a half, more shadowed type of
Yeah.
thing. And I found that very telling because, again, as we find out later about Cobell and kind of the things that she's hiding and the things we don't know about, and how there's kind of like this, some of you may think you know me, but you're only getting a bit of me, and there's still a bit that's
Right.
over here in the shadows. Whereas Helena is fully revealed for the most part.
Yeah.
And then again, like you said, the table setup definitely stood out to me as well. And where my brain went was again a foreshadowing concept of like where these people are proximally to each other and what that foreshadows about like where they are positioned versus where they want to be, if that
Mm.
makes sense. Like or where they're positioned, where they are being placed, and where their true positions are, right? So
Okay.
Cobell isn't the main attraction, but she should be, because again, as we
Yeah.
find out later, inventor of Severance. She should be the one who's at the head of the table and orchestrating the show, but she's just off sides. She's very close, but she can't quite get there.
Yeah.
Drummond is way off in the distance. But what we find is throughout the season, what he wants is to get, again, closer proximity. So the fact that he's in the room the whole time
Yeah.
means like, I'm listening. I know what's going
Yeah.
on. And I'm going to use all of that to get one chair closer to, in-game destination. So it just,
Right.
that all kind of stood out to me in a very different way. It's like if he didn't matter, he wouldn't be in the scene, right? If he didn't
Right.
matter, he wouldn't even be at the table. He'd maybe just be standing or near the door, looking like a guard or whatever behind
Hmm.
Helena. But the fact that he has a position at the table, is that the position where he wants to be? No. But it keeps him in the room, as Hamilton would say. He's in the room where it happens. So I just, that kind of clicked in my brain a little differently to look at that scene. It's
Right.
like, oh, okay, I see little chess pieces
Hmm.
and where they are and the queen, and I don't know chess, y'all,
Yeah.
but chess pieces.
I don't know chess, y'all.
No chess. I know everyone's trying
Oh,
to get
that's
to the
funny.
queen. I know that much.
That's
So,
funny. I have a client right now who likes to play it all the time, but like we don't know how to play it. But if you play it on the computer, they teach you
they
kind
do
of,
give you the
and
moves.
but she refuses to call the correct names. So she calls the bishop the priest. It has a little
Okay.
cross on it. I get it. She heard me call
A castle.
the rook once, and she got the brook part. She thinks I said brook, and I'm like, no, 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 rook, no b. But she's like the brook, but the defense tower. It looks like a defense tower. So I guess she plays like, I don't know, role player first person shooter games
Okay.
set in castles or something because of the
Okay.
defense tower. It's really funny. Anyway, unimportant, but just made me think of that.
um, what else? Is there anything else that stood out to me in that moment? Oh, the other thing that stood out to me in that scene was in the moment where Cobell kind of gets bold and speaks to Helena after she gives her that crappy offer.
Yeah.
And she says, you know, you don't value me, you fear me. But the break between lines is literally it goes from Cobell and she says, you don't value me. And then it cuts to Milchick doing all this stuff to prep on this motorcycle. Then it cuts back to
Mm,
Cobell and says, you fear me. And then you see him
yeah.
tearing off with a flaming red, you know, it's heat from the engine, but it looks like kind of flames
Yeah.
coming out of the back of his engine. And again, what that made me think was a bit of foreshadowing to show like these two are closer alike than you would think. And the
Yeah.
reality is, anyone in this position, there's a bit of a lack of respect for the people that have to hold down and manage the severed floor. And they're always
Yep.
just going to use you as like a babysitter to chase around these innings, but they don't value what you bring to the table unless you
Hmm.
make them value what you bring to the table.
Right.
So I just found it
Yeah.
interesting how they cut between those two, because I think the way I processed it the first time was more of a usurping, like, oh, this is the man that's coming for your job. This is the man that's coming for your spot. And now I see it more
Hmm.
as like a, whether it's you or me, they're not going to value you any more than they value me. Like,
Right.
unless you make them see you. So we end up seeing that battle with Milchick down the road and how he kind of has to come to
Yeah.
the same place that Cobell had to come to with Helena.
Crazy.
It's wild how you look at things different with the end in sight, right? So
Yes.
yeah, everything had a different flip to it. But that also tells me again that these directors and cinematographers know the story and where it's going. So they're infusing little bits
Yeah.
even at the beginning, right? Nothing is
Yeah.
an accident. Nothing's like, oh, wow, I wasn't trying to do that at all. You know,
Yeah.
these are very intentional people doing intentional things. I don't think much else. Anything else catch your eye within the episode past this point?
I made a note about the overhead shot of the water drop layout of Dylan's cul-de-sac where he lives, and I don't remember why.
I will say that shot, even the first go round, always
Yeah.
arrests my attention. Don't know why, not sure. And even this
Yeah.
time I was trying to look to see like what is it about this shot that's like got me so
Yeah.
fixated. I still can't figure it out other than the fact that it's the lumen water droplet, but
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something about that shot that just is so like, wow. Going back to what you were saying actually about all the dark stuff, this
Yeah.
episode is dark from start to finish and
Hmm.
it's all purposeful. One of the biggest things that I noticed is there's a lot of backlighting in scenes where there's natural light or window light, and
Hmm.
they are purposely removing any like key light or front light, right? You're only
Hmm.
being lit for the back. So everyone's in shadow the whole
Yeah.
episode. And one of the things I noticed was like, for example, when Mark on the next day, because at first I thought maybe it's just like this because it's nighttime and oh, it's spooky and it's nighttime and we're trying to
Right.
do all these things in the shadow and the cloak of darkness and da da da. But then the next day,
That,
when
hmm.
Mark and Devin are sitting in the diner,
Yeah. It's still.
all backlight from the window. They are all in
Uh-huh.
shadow. And I even looked up at the ceiling and I was like, they turned all these lights off in the diner. Like, which
Like,
again,
where are
a
these lights?
diner
Yeah.
is one of those other places where it would be bright as all get out inside of a diner.
Yeah.
Diners are not dimly lit. It's not like a romantic, fancy restaurant. They're bright.
Especially not at breakfast time.
No, yeah. People trying to wake up. Truck drivers are trying to,
Right.
perk up.
Like maybe you got a diner that changes the mood at night, but they weren't there at night.
So again, it's all very purposeful storytelling. And what I kind of gathered from that, especially in that moment, is again, like there are closed off parts that people are trying to keep hidden. But now the light of this OTC situation has like forced everything from one side to the other. So it's like,
Right.
we have to deal with this, but there's still people that I don't want to deal with this. So I don't want to, have this part exposed. I don't want to have to be confronted with XYZ. But now it's like,
Right.
it's happening. So, mood and tension aside, it's the forced confrontation of like what's done in the dark coming to the light. I'm trying to think if there's another scene where that happened. Oh, in the conference room for sure.
Yeah.
During the day. And I found it so interesting that, especially during Helly's reprimand scene, when it's Drummond and Natalie, and they're sitting on the side, because I believe there was a point where maybe Helen, oh yeah, I think when they were talking to Milchick, there was a point where it was Helena on that window facing side
Yes.
conveying to Milchick, and she's in the shadow with the backlighting. And then once she's in trouble, it flips. She's on the other end.
Yeah.
And so again, we're
Yeah.
using the light to kind of talk about exposing, right? These people are still
Yes.
shadowed, the ones that are pushing buttons from the behind the scenes, Drummond and Natalie. And then we have Helena on the other end, fully lit by the window, can't
Yeah.
escape the light. It's like everything. And this is after, she's gotten exposed essentially on the severed floor for
Right.
trying to do espionage poorly.
Yeah. Well, let's get into how episode 5 Trojan's Horse relates then, because you're already getting into the
All
flips,
right.
right? So there's a lot of those flips too, like where you said, like in the beginning, in episode 2, she's the one that's backlit, and then Milkshake is the one, right? And then by episode 5, the other episode that these two worked on, we get that flip. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
One
Go
more
ahead.
thing before we get there that I
Okay.
just wanted to note: the sliding doors with Dylan's scene, which I thought when he's doing his interview, and
Oh,
you have the
okay.
doors of the door company. But I just found it interesting because it's like they could have just been in a meeting room. We didn't have to have the sliding doors going back and forth.
Mhm.
But then I was like, wait a minute, isn't Sliding Doors a movie? What is that movie about? And so,
Mhm.
have you seen Sliding Doors?
No, I've heard of it.
I've never seen it. But if you haven't seen it, you guys listening and you're like me, it is a Gwyneth Paltrow movie, um, where essentially it's almost like a multiverse story. It's essentially like there are two timelines running where it's like if she had made one decision, it could have gone this direction. If she made another decision, it could have gone this direction. And you're seeing how those two kind of slide in and out of
Hmm.
reality, and has something to do with her like going home at a certain time. And if she did it at this point, she would have caught her boyfriend cheating on her. And if she did it at another point, she would have never caught him,
Mm.
and
Okay.
how those two stories play out. So all this to say, again, more severance, splitting brain, multiversal storylines of two different lives
Interesting.
operating at the same time. I didn't know that, but I was like, that has to be, again, a little directory nod or cinematography nod
Huh.
with the sliding doors to show like,
It's definitely a better reference than Monsters Inc. because that's what it made me think of.
I
All the
mean, but that
doors.
works too. It works too. And it might have been like the actual mechanics of using the door conveyors like that may have come from, listen, all movies create impact and influence. So who's to say? But I just was like, maybe they've seen both. And they were like, let's again do a little needle drop. That's it. Okay. So going back to Trojan Horse. Pop, pop, pop. The one thing I can say, these two director cinematographer combos, their two episodes, very closely connected to each other, where it's like even the story and just the way they were telling things more closely, I feel like, than some of the other ones, lined up with what they established in one episode and what they brought back
Right.
around in the next episode. Because again, they're still in this creeping tension vibe. Um, it's not quite as dark as episode 2, but there are still
Yeah.
some like backlit moments where they're using shadow and light to convey
Yeah.
story points. There's a lot of that.
Yeah. And I think we both mentioned Creepy Whistling Man
Oh
again in this.
gosh.
And I think in particular when I was watching it, I was like, yeah, I already thought he was creepy, but with having episode 2 as their other episode in mind while watching him, I was like, oh yeah, these two must have both worked on horror films before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or in that genre, and they definitely have. um,
And again, just
so
panning
yeah.
in on certain little things like wheels creeping across the floor and like
Hmm.
a grip of the handlebars and just like
Yeah.
what's happening, all these obscure references. You're not seeing a face. That's definitely a horror
Right.
movie trope, like who's the
Hmm.
monster, who do we got to be afraid of. We're not going to show you, we're just going to show you all these other things.
Yep.
Makes perfect sense. And then of course ominous music, especially a whistle.
Yeah.
Don't know why. Whistle can be pleasant or it can be creepy, kind of like children's voices.
Ooh.
One way or the other. Children's singing, by the way, not just children's voice, although sometimes children's voices
I
too.
immediately think of that. Did you ever see that influenza documentary where the little kids are singing the song about influenza? They're like,
No,
had a little birdie, her name was Enza. Open the window and influenza. And it was
nope,
used
don't
to like
like that.
discourage people to like, hey, this disease is in the air. Let's close the windows,
What?
which is
Okay,
like
this is a
actually the
tangent,
opposite
you
of what you
guys.
should do. But
What is it about back in days of yore turning like infirmities and plagues into like nursery rhymes? What was that about? Why
right,
was the Europeans
right.
doing that so much? What?
Right? Isn't Ring Around the Rosie also about like the plague or something?
Something like that.
Wild. Wild.
Yep. And I think the Rockabye Baby is another something weird, either having to do with infant mortality or something.
Well, I mean, they falling out the trees. The baby is falling out the tree. Why? How? Why do we think that is a good way to put a child to sleep is to sing to them about their death?
I don't know. I don't know. And we all know these songs.
Yep,
Don't think twice
sure
about
do.
them. Just singing them. I think Miss Mary Mack is another weird, has another
Oh
weird origin. All
no.
these nursery rhymes, weird,
They're either
ominous.
about like death in something or the racist. So many are racist
That
too.
too. That too. Or people being beheaded.
Can't sing Five Little Monkeys. We got to change it to another animal or
Oh
something.
yeah. Yep. Mm.
There's a bunch. Anyway.
Pivot, guys. Side tangent.
Yeah, whistling and children can be creepy. That's what we're
That's
that's bring it back. The
yep. That's
whistling
what it was
man is
all about.
creepy, matches the genre that they're going for with these two episodes for sure.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
So we already talked about the window scene, conference room scenes. If you go back and watch these, definitely look at how they're set up in episode 2 versus how they're set up in episode 5 and
Yes.
notice the changes in who's where,
Yeah.
how they're lit. It definitely stands out to you
and
very
and we
clearly.
spoke about this when episode 5 came up. I think not both of us not realizing again that it was the same director and cinematographer as this
Mm-hmm.
episode. We were like, oh yeah, this is like the exact opposite of the the hallway scene in the beginning of the season,
Mm-hmm.
where everything is dark and there's just that spotlight following versus this one.
So
Yeah.
another moment that again crosses between those two episodes, I didn't mention it in the last one, but the way they use camera techniques to convey a sense of distorted reality for the character. So one of the things they did in episode 2 with Helena, I noticed was when she was watching that tape of Mark and Helly on the floor
Hmm.
kissing for the first time. And obviously you notice like how they're doing this close up of her face and then the zoom in on her eyes, which is wild. And I just keep thinking as an actor, like, man, you got to hold your eye just like straight open and so they can catch that little reflection. But one of the things that stood out to me in episode 2 with that close up, I was like, she looks almost, it looks almost like a fisheye lens where like
Not as
it's
drastic.
bubbled. It's not
Yeah.
as stark, but there's definitely like a rounding or a curvature of the space around her, and her head is even a little more proportionally like big. And I was looking up what would is there a certain lens that would do that isn't a fisheye because it's not that dramatic. And I guess
Hmm.
just if you take a wide angle lens and use it in a close up,
Oh,
it'll
okay.
create that kind of rounding vignetting naturally. So I feel like they must have done something like that effect wise. And again, what it does is add this sense of like uneasiness and, just kind of a throwing off of your reality, which is exactly what's happening
Yeah.
to Helen in that moment. It's like she's seeing herself doing this thing that she would never do. And what's going on? Right.
Yeah.
So the way they bring that back around in episode 5 is when her and Mark are talking in the bathroom after Mark reveals that him and Helena had sex at the ortho,
Hmm.
and they do that same type of close up on her face and this kind of like tension in the eyes, and it's just like gets kind of shaky. And again, it's just like this
Yeah.
camera technique that reveals like an unsettling of or a sense of disconnection
Yeah.
from your reality, right? So
Right.
same type of technique going across the two episodes.
Yeah.
Okay. So the other camera technique I noticed that they use to create an uneasiness or a disconnect for the character is switching to handheld. So one of the
Mm,
things they did that was really interesting and definitely conveyed is when Helena is above ground, everything's very steady cam or on dollies or cranes. You're following her. It's pretty stable. And then as soon as she gets down to the severed floor, they immediately switch to handheld
mm,
and it's shaky, and she looks unnerved. And then the whole frame is like giving you this little vibration tension. And then it continues to be that shot or that handheld all the way through the meeting in the office with Milchick, all the way until they get back to the MDR office, I believe.
mm.
So that whole time, again, it just continues to convey this sense of like, what is going on? What is happening?
Yeah.
And it's these little things that you don't think of when you're just watching it, but it's all adding to the atmosphere to create this like sense of I don't get what's happening. I don't know what's going on. It puts you in where the characters are and it gets you in their headspace.
Right.
Because I remembered it from the first time watching it through for sure with the elevator, but I don't think I tracked that it literally stays handheld.
Continued
And
on.
especially in those hallway shots, we're so used to those shots being smooth dolly shots, right?
Yes.
And it's handheld the whole time. So you're feeling the shake that Helly is feeling coming back to this floor, having no idea what's going on, having all these questions.
Right.
And the way they're doing close ups on each of the characters in Milchick's office, it's all handheld. Brilliant stuff.
Yeah.
Anything else you catch in five?
I put down here in my notes that across both of them, there are a lot of overhead shots of unique shapes. So that must be why I wrote down the cul-de-sac.
Oh, okay.
But there
There it
are a
is.
lot of there's overhead shots of the parking lot and in front of Lumen, and there's overhead shots of across the street from Lumen and
Mm-hmm.
the teardrop, and yeah, there's just a lot of that. So I was like, oh, that's in both of these. But I will say some of this stuff you're going to hear again because I think overall, and we knew this, but I think I thought, oh, on second watch, I'm going to find more things that are really unique. And I think overall, they do a really good job of making sure that it's still cohesive, right? It's not like
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of TV shows where somebody guest directs or somebody comes on, just for one or two episodes and you can immediately tell, like, no, these are 100% somebody else. But they really try to stay in the lane of what was established in season
Right.
one, I think. So there are a lot of similarities even across like this duo and the next duo as we come to it. And overhead shots is one of them.
That is true. They do like an overhead shot. And how they use them are interesting as well, which we'll
Hmm.
get into with some of the other ones. There were a couple
Yeah.
that stood out that were pretty creative. What else? What else? Okay, so this is just a note that I had. These are just things that I caught. These aren't necessarily cinematography things, but they're just things that I
Okay.
caught now that I'm looking closely at things.
Yeah.
One of them was so when they're in Milchick's office and he's telling them that Irving isn't returning, and especially after watching episode two, because
Yeah.
in episode two, when he goes to Irving's house and he talks to him, he's like, I consider your Innie a close personal friend and blah, blah, blah. And it seemed very
Yeah.
insincere. And then you get to this moment and he's telling them Irving's not coming back. And the thing that I caught was that I think there was an actual sincerity in Milchick at the fact that Irving wasn't coming back, which
Mm.
the first time through, I thought he was just putting on this whole like, it's not coming back, guys, get over it. It's happening. But there's a one little millisecond of a moment after he says something where he looks kind of down at himself, like he really is kind of like, yeah, he's not, it's done.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I didn't catch that before. I was like, so maybe he really did think Irving B, at least original 1.0 Irving
Right.
B, was he maybe did consider him a close friend, at least as much as an any can be.
I mean, that makes sense because, like, if you're supervising someone, you can't really, like, you can't be for real be their friend, but you're probably going to feel closer to the ones that are like drinking your Kool-Aid, right? And
True.
and
Who had
Irving was
bought
all
in.
about it, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
feel like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's I guess to speak to the directing side of it,
Hmm.
letting the camera hang on that moment to catch that, because they could have just zoomed past it,
Yeah.
caught him in audio saying the words and not gotten his reactions at all if they didn't care about it. But clearly they
Yeah.
did want that little moment to register to be like, wait, is he saddened by this? Is he upset by this?
Right.
So that's a choice that a director makes. Could have made a different choice, but clearly wanted us to kind of again question, where does Milchick's loyalty lie where the innies are concerned? Does he actually have concern and care for their well-being in so much as they serve Lumen's purposes? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Or is it complete disconnect? And I think these are little moments that kind of say, like, maybe in his weird, warped way, he cares a little,
Yeah.
to some degree. So, what else stood out to me or you? Anything else stand out to you?
You have a lot more notes than me.
I have a lot.
Did
I
you
have
get
a lot.
everything in?
Okay, well, a lot of it I have talked about. Again, it's more of the way they use framing. You kind of talked about it or touched on it, the way they do thirds and the way they use empty space or
Hmm.
obstructions so that again it kind of tells where a person is in that moment. So I'm thinking of the scene where they have after Irving's funeral and Mark walks out and Helly chases him down and they're talking in the hall, right? And in that scene they're both kind of more to one third of the frame. Like it's not like they're evenly spaced out.
Yeah.
She is more to his side, but then he is obscured by a wall. So you don't see
Okay.
him clearly in the shot. There's like a wall obstruction. And again, I think that just talks about how he is kind of closed off to her in this moment. Like there's a
Yeah.
part of me that wants to be open to you, but I've just been betrayed by you. So I need to literally put up a wall so
Yeah.
you don't get all of me because I don't know what I'm getting. Right. These are choices that again is visual conveyance in the storytelling. Because if you just wanted a clean shot, it would have been easy to set that up and have them both
Yeah.
fully in the frame. But again, choices that add to the storytelling.
Yeah, that's interesting because that's something I know later on. And so you bringing it up now is just another example of like that cohesiveness
Mm-hmm.
across the
Mm-hmm.
duos. Yeah.
Exactly. We already talked about in the main episode too, just the transition between that scene and the Natalie Milchick scene and how you kind of get this fade in of like at one point you see Mark and Natalie in the same
Yes.
frame and before it fully fades to Natalie and Milchick enters the
Yeah.
scene. And it could, we talked about it then, it could mean a bunch of different things. It could mean that maybe Mark and Natalie have some weird, maybe their characters have more in common than you think on the surface, or just the fact
Hmm.
that Natalie and Milchick mirror Helly and Mark in this way, that these are the only two that understand each other, and could
Yeah.
could mean all sorts of things, but more interesting storytelling there. Okay, this is my last thing in this little segment. I think everything else got covered for the most part. The other thing that I found interesting is that final conference scene that is Milchick's review, right? And we talked about how they kind of use one person, usually the person who's in trouble is usually
Hmm.
being lit by the window, and the people who are in control of the
Yeah.
situation are on the window facing side. In this scene, it's the
This
opposite.
it's the other way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But what I found interesting was that it almost, so this is what I put. Go with me on this, guys.
Okay.
I what I said was Drummond is not backlit by the window, but he's still somehow in shadow, because there's a point where he leans forward and you can see him clearly in the light, and then he slinks back and then he's kind of concealed again. And being on the opposite side of the table, and what that kind of told me is like he can control, he's the person in control in this moment, right?
Hmm.
Milchick has to be whatever the lighting dictates on that side, but Drummond can kind of come in and out of the shadows as he chooses
Yeah.
and make himself known and then retreat. So it kind of again speaks to where he is positionally as opposed to Milchick. And then the other thing was
Hmm.
that what I found interesting was that Milchick being in the backlit space almost enhances his darkness as a person, like his actual skin tone.
Hmm.
And Drummond being getting the window light enhances his whiteness. So
Right. He's washed out. Yeah.
racial dynamics,
Hmm.
right? We're using the lighting
Yeah.
to convey even more how there is that is in play with this power dynamic that's going on with this review.
You know what's interesting that you point out, that, normally it is the other way around where the person that's in trouble is in Mr. Drummond's position in this
Mm-hmm.
scene. It makes me think, and I spoke about this in my, if you're a patron, you will see this, my second thoughts
Mm-hmm.
episode about this episode, where Milchek fully seemed surprised that the Ortbo was brought up. Like, how did you not know you were going to be in big trouble for this, right? But that makes me think also that like he's purposely put in the position that is not known for the person in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Because he is aware he's been in that room
Oh
and been
yeah.
on that side
Yep.
before,
Yep.
right? To like give him a false sense of security
Security, you're
going
right. That's a
into
good point.
his review.
Like you might not be in as much trouble as you think you are. You're still on the good side. And it's like,
Yeah. And
psych.
then he's like smacked in the face with it. He's caught off guard. He wasn't prepared for it. And he
Mm,
may have been a little prepared if he had sat in the
like the
spot that
trouble
he
chair,
knows
like,
is
oh,
normally. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
that's a good point.
Like he got sent to detention, from I don't know, the yard instead of being asked to go to the principal's office, right?
Yeah.
So he wasn't expecting it. He didn't know it was coming.
Uh, that's a good point. Yeah, that actually makes sense. It speaks to why he's so thrown off. Yeah. The other thing, and this is just the thing that stood out to me. Okay, so we already talked about the big word stuff, and that comes up in his review. And of
Yes.
course, right when he brings it up and Milchick tries to state his case, Drummond says anti-deflections will be heard at the end, right? And of
Hmm.
course, my brain goes, anti-deflections? That's a big word.
Big
Who
word.
who says anti-deflections? And
Hmm.
then I thought even further, and I was like, wait, is he using that word right? Is anti-deflections a word? Because I was like, because a deflection, I think, is what he means. Because if Milchick is trying to state his case, then he's trying to deflect from the accusation that's coming at him.
Hmm.
An
Hmm.
anti-deflection
Yeah.
means that you are actually speaking in favor of the thing, right? Am I crazy?
I mean, what'd you say earlier? They hate us because they ain't us, right? He wishes he could use the words
Right?
the way Milchek can, but he don't know what they mean.
I need this confirmed, but I have to think that this is one of those like dumb person tries to use big words and does it incorrectly, a
Yep.
la Knives Out too.
I was just gonna say that. We were just talking about Knives Out
Yep,
in the Glass
yep,
Onion.
yep.
Edward Norton's character.
Edward
Is
Norton's
that?
character. This feels like one
Hmm.
of those because I was like, I don't think, and I looked it up too. Anti deflection did not come up in the dictionary. It was anything that could be defined. They were like, do you mean anti reflective? Do you mean anti
And it's
detection?
like,
And I was
you know
like,
what I
oh,
mean? You could put anti in front of anything, right? If you're using it correctly. But yeah,
mm-hmm.
this is like a double negative situation. It's like, no, the word you meant was just deflection, I think. Yeah, for sure.
Just had to say my piece about that. Yeah. All right. Anyway,
Love it.
anything else before we move on?
No, let's move on.
All right, guys. So we're on to our second duo, Uta Brisevitz and David Lanzenberg. I keep wanting to say Lazenberg. I don't know. I think I'm thinking of David Laszlo. Anyway, doesn't matter. Um,
Oh.
so, Uta Brisevitz is a German born director and cinematographer acclaimed for her visually compelling storytelling across both film and television. Her TV directing credits include episodes of Stranger Things, Love, Westworld, The Wheel of Time, Jessica Jones, and Orange is the New Black. These are all great shows.
Hmm.
Brisevitz began her career as a cinematographer, collaborating with director Brad Anderson on films like Next Stop Wonderland and Session 9. She received an Emmy nomination for her cinematography on HBO's Hung, and in 2005, she made her feature directorial debut with American Sweatshop, a psychological thriller exploring the dark side of social media, which premiered at the South by Southwest Film Festival, my
I was
hometown.
like, I want to see it.
Yeah, I'm very curious about that. I hadn't heard about it.
Yeah, it's fresh, so I don't know where we're going to be able to watch it, but I want to see it.
Need like a Criterion subscription or something, probably. All right. So David Lanzenberg is an Emmy nominated cinematographer known for his visually rich and versatile work across film and television. His credits include Wednesday, Palm Royale, The Morning Show, Paper Towns, and The Age of Adeline. With a background in music videos and commercials, Lanzenberg brings a polished cinematic style to everything from prestige drama to genre storytelling. Now, this is telling. I'm glad we're reading these again out loud. Just for you guys' benefit, but also for mine, because now it's informing some of the things we see. Okay. So these two did the episodes 2-6 Attila and 2-9 The After Hours. So
Mm.
both very pivotal turning point episodes now that I think about it.
True, yeah.
So, what caught your attention in Attila to start?
Well, the main thing I think that just stood out to me in this one was the angles and the composition. So, particularly with not centering Mark and Helly in their scenes together. So, everything is off balance. You mentioned the rule of thirds,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're heavy on the rule of thirds,
Mm-hmm.
where they are just doing one little section, one little corner of here's the focus, and there's nothing else important going on, but your eye still moves around the scene trying to look for whatever else is going on, and it just seems very off balance,
Mm-hmm.
which gets repeated again in their other episode.
I feel like in those moments too, it's like it's setting your brain up to expect something or someone to enter the frame, right?
Yes.
Because either when there's a gap between people, or if everyone's shifted to one side, you're like, is someone else coming? Is something else
Hmm.
about to happen? It's like it sets your brain up unconsciously for something, which
Yeah, and again, it's happening at times when the characters are going through something unsettling, right? So one of the times is we get the refrigerator flash
oh yeah,
in this episode. So it's Helly and Mark all the way to the far right. And
mm-hmm,
he's looking in the fridge, and then it cuts to him at home, and it's also just kind of a blank, undecorated wall. So it mirrors seeing the white
exactly,
wall and the kitchenette. Yeah, so purposely unsettling.
yes. Um, the thing that stood out to me with these two directors is that they like a POV shift. And that can come in a
Mm.
few different ways. It can either come with like characters having a POV shift, or them actually doing like a focus change within a shot.
Yeah.
And it usually is there to establish someone having a change of perspective. So it's not just about like, oh, we're going to put this person focus and then this one. It's usually it shifts when someone has like an aha moment, or like they're
Mm.
hearing something for the first time,
Yeah.
which again I thought was unique and creative to use it in that way.
Yeah.
Oh, the other thing I noticed is that they like using reflective surfaces, which we've seen in Severance, but the
Hmm.
way they're doing it here is again in a way that creates a bit of an unease or an unsettling feeling.
Yeah.
So one of them was that same kitchenette scene. There was a mirror there that's
Yeah.
showing them, which I was like, first off, why is there a mirror in the
Why is
kitchenette?
there a mirror in the kitchen? Yeah.
And then and again, it's just like it makes you feel weird because it's like you're seeing two of the same thing happening, and why, but all of those things like that and the thirds is setting you up for this shifting thing that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then the other time I noticed a reflective surface was the side of the bathroom stall. When Mark is in the bathroom, that they kind of linger on the fact that you can see his reflection in the stall surface,
Yeah.
and it just kind of again is kind of oogie.
Right.
And I think the reason they're choosing it for this episode is because of the fact that this is coming out of Mark's reintegration stuff, and there
Yeah.
is all that happening. And so we're just going to use all the techniques to kind of add to that theme
Right.
in this episode. Did you notice they used more, or at least for season two, more blue in this episode? There was a lot of blue, which I found interesting. Or like the
Yeah, it
blue
was
was
funny. I
popping.
saw your note. Yeah, I saw your note of this, and I was like, I feel like maybe this is where that one of those fan theories came from,
Mm.
where they're like blue and lumen and lumen and lumen, and that's where you start to get that fan theory about freaking Devin being lumen one.
Oh,
Because she wears like blue one time. They never the confirmation bias, right? They don't mention all the other times where she's not wearing blue.
which is so
Um,
much of the time. But anyway, we've talked about
but it made
it.
me think back. I was like, how much is the blue really used? But it is heavy in this episode, and I was like, now I wanna watch and see if is
it's
it really that heavy in the
it's
other
heavy and
episodes, or
it's
is it?
strategic, especially having watched the other episodes prior to this one. It
Hmm.
stood out to me more. I was like, I'm noticing a
Yeah.
lot of blue, and it's usually around Mark specifically.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's where I'm like, I don't know about this Devin brouhaha,
Right.
but it's
Right.
mostly with Mark, where it's like the very beginning scene where he's talking to Ragabi. It's in that
Hmm.
fish tank, and it's like very much haloing his head in his like close up.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a good point, and that's why I don't necessarily associate it with Lumen either. It's
It
not just his innie.
No, it's something else, and I can't figure out what it is, because the other time it stood out to me is at least as a light source, because there's other times where it's in their wardrobe or colors, but it's just more
Yeah,
that it pops more than it has
right.
in previous episodes. But lighting wise was when they were in the diner, him and Helena. And what I thought was interesting was the
Mm,
blue was behind Mark's head and red was
yeah,
behind
was
Helena's
behind
head.
hers. Yeah,
Again, don't know what that
yeah,
means, but very
right.
intentional, right?
Rodnesha, that also, boom, that also debunks that theory, right? Because everyone had associated red with the Audis, but they're both Audis in that scene.
Exactly. So it has something else. I don't know what
Yeah.
it's indicating, but I feel like there's another reason why Mark has such
Good and
associations with
evil
that color.
is a really like
That's a simple, yeah.
direct and obvious one, but something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. But it did stand out to me in this one in particular. And again, I noticed it not just in Lumen, but even outside in the
Yeah,
real world, quote unquote. So
right, right.
don't know what that's indicating, but clearly an intentional use of visual imagery.
Mhm.
Did anything else catch your eye in this one?
No.
We already talked about. The only other thing I was going to say is, again, which we've already said, there's a lot of duality things, which we
Yeah.
do get a lot of duality stuff throughout Severance, but there is some more particular things where it's happening not just with innies that, again, I think has more to do with perspective than it does like taking other perspectives or shifting
Mm,
perspectives than it does the
okay.
duality of innie and outie. So we already
Right.
talked about when we did the Attila episode inside of Field's house, right?
Yes.
I noticed because I thought it was a mirror when they come into the home and Irving is putting his coat away, that the
Yes.
closets are the same. And I thought it was a mirror
In the mirror
of the
at
one
first.
closet,
Yeah.
but no, they have a separate closet on the other side of the wall. Because when Irving comes through, I was like, oh, well, how's it reflecting? So they must just have two identical closets, but they're separated.
Hmm.
And then, of course, the cabinets where very intentionally like darker wood paneling and lighter,
Hmm.
just flat white paneling. And it's like, why would anyone do that in a
Yeah, and
house?
there's even a split of the tchotchkes and stuff that they have on
Yep,
top of the cabinets in that
yep,
way. It like
yep.
tonally switches.
Which, when we talked about it again, we were saying could highlight kind of the dark and light of Fields and Bert, right? He has a dark
Hmm.
past. Field seems like more of a lighter presence, but it could also have to do with like, I mean, I guess that would be the easiest one, but I wonder if it's also just, again, showing there's a rift between the two of them, the way they see the
Hmm.
world, the way they move in the world.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I do remember mentioning in the episode was wardrobe wise, Bird is in all black, Fields is in
Yeah.
blue and green. See, more
Mm.
blue. And Irving is in black and white.
Yeah.
So it's almost like this again, Irving is kind of like this midpoint between the two of them.
Yeah.
And yeah. The only other thing was that they gave Mark two fortune cookies, which at first I was like, oh, twos, more
More
two stuff.
twos.
But then I also thought to myself, or maybe it's just because they watched him eat like five plates of food and they're like, he must be extra hungry. Let's give him two cookies
Right.
instead of one.
He ordered enough for 14 people. Is he expecting somebody else? Maybe let's give
Let's just give
another
him two
fortune cookie
cookies. He
just in
might need,
case somebody joins
this
him.
man's
Yeah.
hungry. So
Hungry.
yeah. That's it with that one. That's all I got.
Okay, so after hours. So my first note for the after hours was this is another overhead shot heavy one. So again, I was like, I don't know what this means. I don't know if it means anything in particular, but it's just another thing that for me shows the cohesiveness of Cross because like we said earlier, there are a lot of overhead shots.
Yep.
But I think maybe also if I'm trying to put some meaning to it, maybe there's more in this shot in this episode because again, it's another turning point episode and there's a lot happening. So there's a lot of like establishing shots of like we are doing something new right now. We're going somewhere new right now. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot with like meeting in the forest and then there's a lot with like heading back to the cabins. Yeah, so maybe there's just
Uh,
like we need more overhead shots because we need more of like,
we need to
hey, we've never
establish a
been here
whole.
before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which again is jarring as a viewer, or does it's giving you the advanced prep of like get ready because
Yeah.
you haven't gone where we're going. You think you know
Right.
what's coming, or you think you know this town and you don't. For me, like you said, just keeping up the theme of like perspective shifting and using their shots to establish that. One of the things that I thought was interesting in the cold open with Helena at her home,
Hmm.
and we see the swim thing. But what I thought was interesting was they use the same type of setup they use with the innies going down their white halls, and we see her
Yes.
going down the same process. Only it's like there's the white of the snow, and again this
Yeah.
very sterile home that gives the same type of energy as the severed floor.
I had the same note, only I compared it more to the hallway scenes in those first two episodes that we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I
Mm-hmm.
was like, huh, they're really again really great with the continuity because it's a very unique way to do it, but it did very much mirror again following Helena along on a long shot
Yep. Yep.
down, on her way to who knows where. What trouble lies ahead for her.
in her home. And that's what's the
Hmm.
crazy part, is that like when we see the innies trekking these halls, we're nervous for them because we're like, what is this floor, what is this space, this is weird, everything is, there's nothing in the halls, it's very monochromatic, it's very desolate, it's very
Yeah.
unsettling. And then you're seeing this in a home, and again, I love the use of even the design aesthetic within the home to still feel like it's not for people, or it's not like homey,
Yes.
right? It still feels
Yeah.
very sterile, like these severed
Hmm.
halls do. It's like even you've got all these little
Yeah.
tchotchkes and things up, but it's like, don't look like people live here. This looks like a museum, or
Does. Yeah.
weird. Same thing with the use of close-ups, but I noticed that a lot of them are shot from underneath rather than straight on,
Hmm.
which again may just create again more unsettling, more tension, because we're heading into this
Yeah.
new dynamic. We're about to pursue this new plan. Everyone's feeling very about it.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. It's continuing the same patterns from the
Yeah.
previous episode,
Yeah.
from six,
Yeah.
and just
So
connecting it
yeah, and
through.
in that same note, in that same vein, the rule of thirds comes up again a lot. I landed on the same thing here that like you brought up with the previous pair, is that they're using it as a device to communicate when something is off kilter or when their worldview is changing. So I noticed we talked about it happening when Helly finds out what happened at the Ortpo and when Mark is getting his reintegration flashes, but it also happens when Audi Mark is telling Milchek that work is just work. And so like that's like a
Mm-hmm.
worldview change for like when there, it's very off balance when he is digesting that maybe he is taking his letting work take too much of his
Maybe.
life and importance in his life, right? Yeah. So I just noticed that. I was like, yeah, it's really pivotal moments for the characters when this is happening.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I don't got much else. I can't say what I was gonna say.
Why?
Because I was gonna say I can't wait to talk about this episode in particular with a certain somebody who we're gonna be talking to soon.
Oh, yeah, I put it in an upcoming Second Thoughts episode because I was like, we can tell our patrons this is happening. But yeah,
Mm,
we won't tell you guys. Maybe you should
mm,
join Patreon.
maybe.
But
Or
a certain
wait, your
somebody,
choice.
yeah, yeah, we're gonna, man, I hope we have this person. I hope they have time to stay with us for a while because there's going to be a lot of episodes I want to
Oh,
dive
I
into
need to
visually.
okay.
Um,
Finish it up.
that's
All right.
enough clues.
That's
That's
enough.
enough clues. um, let's move on
All
to
right.
our blast from the past, Aoife McArdle. So we're gonna.
Wee.
It was so interesting to watch these three episodes isolated, so far removed, and now after season two,
Mm-hmm.
because we're going back to season one. So Aoife McArdle is a Northern Irish writer and director known for her visually inventive storytelling across film, television, music videos, and commercials. Her debut feature film, Kissing Candace, premiered at the Toronto and Berlin International Film Festivals to critical acclaim. And she has directed music videos for artists like U2, Coldplay, John Hopkins, as well as award winning commercials for brands including Nike, Audi, and Squarespace. Her work often explores outsider characters and existential themes characterized by atmospheric visuals and long choreographed shots. Yeah, she directed the chunk right in the middle of season one. So, episode four, The UUR, episode five, The Grim Barbarity of Optics and Design, and episode six, Hide and Seek.
Mm-hmm. It kind of like you said, it was wild to go back to season one because it is interesting what they do to establish the severed floor, because that's the only, or it's not the only, but it's like the steadiest location we get for the characters right
Yeah,
up until the end where things change. And the way they infuse life into the floor compared to season two, where it's like everything's blown up and we're just throwing spaghetti at the walls. It's interesting to see visually how they make the severed floor feel more alive for these characters
yeah,
than it does in season two.
yeah.
So I guess my first thing I noted was just like for episode four, we
Hmm.
start with the scene of Helly having to do her break room time. And the
Yeah,
way they set that up is so, it's interesting because it's creepy by nature of just the way the room is and what it is, and you don't know what the heck is going on. but it's also the way they shoot everything. Like it starts like with a close up on Helly, and it like slowly is pulling back from her, and she's just looking confused and out of it. And then it
Hmm.
switches to Milchek's close up, and it slowly pulls out on him. And then you see him do something with his hands at the table, like checking the paper, the readings or whatever. And then you see it shift to Helly's hands, like kind of pushing in on the table to like try to, keep her grip on these little finger pulse things.
Hmm.
And then it goes back to them being in frame, but with the compunction statement across her face.
Yeah.
And it's this standoff vibe, but like not really a standoff, because like Helly there's no win for her in this situation. It's like you
Right.
can hold out, but up to a certain point. And so one of the things that I noticed too was in one of the pullouts from Milchick, his face or his eyes are lit by two phrases, and one of them, it actually is part of this world, but where the camera catches it, it just says his world. And then the bottom part says like my actions. And I was just like, oh, that's creepy, and kind of again tells you like what's really going on here. Like you can do what you want, but this is my domain, and this is where you're going to
Yeah.
end up every time. So all very intentional little tricks to bring us into this episode. And this is probably the first time, isn't this the first time we've seen the break room, right? Because it's been hinted at and it's been
Hmm.
talked about, but
Yep.
now we're actually in it. Um, and it's very off-putting. So I like the way that they set that up to take you into this episode. And again, it is a standoff in a way, because up to this point, Helly has been very like doggedly defiant. And this is the first time where you feel like, wait, I don't think she has the upper hand in this, right? Which leads to a very extreme measure later. But this is where we see like resistance is futile in a sense.
Yeah.
Did you notice that the clock, by the way, in the break room is on military time and not like normal 1 to 12 time?
No, I didn't, but you be looking at the clocks.
I do. But that's why I'm surprised I didn't notice it the first time. I was like, oh, I didn't catch that, which again is more distortion, especially for that room, because they don't want them to know what time it
Yeah.
really is. They don't know nothing about
Yeah.
military time. So
That's funny.
it said like 17:14 or something like that. And I was like, oh, tricky.
Tricky,
Mm,
tricky.
tricky,
Yeah,
tricky.
no.
Yeah. Anyway.
That's so funny. I noticed in this that there are a lot of dramatic like low angle shots, like really low angle looking up high at the
Yes, I did
subject.
as well.
So there's like when Irving is walking in the hallway by himself after one of his encounters with Bert. And a lot of our hallway scenes are straight on, but for whatever reason they're walking. It's like low angle shot of him
Yeah.
walking.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure the purpose of it. I just was like, huh, that's interesting. And then again, it's very dramatic when they're looking down at the book when they find the book in in the
Yep.
office and they're like, what are we gonna do with this? Don't touch it.
Yep.
Know?
There was another low angle when I think it might have been when Helly came in from the break room and she was standing at the
Mm,
door talking to the other three.
yeah,
And they did
yeah,
shift down at one point while she was like explaining what was going on.
yeah.
And I just thought that was interesting too. And then it went back up. So,
Yeah, and that's interesting because I feel like usually something like that is used when like there's someone in like a position of power, right? So and your POV as the audience is the person who is not in power because you're looking up at the person. That's the
mm-hmm.
POV the camera takes. But it's not used that way here. So I think that's why I was like, huh, this is an interesting way to show this.
See what I wrote down with that, I was like, saying how they're doing these unique tracking shots overhead and below. So I noticed the same thing. But
Hmm.
what it felt like was like spy shots, like peeping shots. So it's like it
Oh,
almost looked
yeah.
like it could have the point of view of like a security camera or like a
Yeah.
spy camera. It was always in these like abnormal places where you can like see what's
Right.
going on, but not fully. And
Yeah.
that was what it kind of read to me, was like you're being watched to some
Yeah, that's
degree.
interesting. Yeah.
So don't know if that's what they were trying to go for, but in a way it
Yeah.
kind of feels like it, because again now we've had this advantage shift from Helly where now it's like I'm really not in control of the situation, and you get all these weird shots where it's like who is in control,
Yeah.
you don't know. um
Um, I'm sitting here fighting the urge to bring up the Sandlot again.
I don't
Brought
fight
it,
it.
I've brought it up so many times. But there's the when they discover the book, it reminds me of there's a similar shot
Oh,
when they're looking down at, is it when they're looking down at, oh shoot, is it after he gets hit with the ball, or yeah, when he gets the black eye, or is it when they're looking at like a busted ball? I can't remember which one it is.
I think the
But
busted
they're
ball for
all,
sure. I do
yeah,
remember.
okay. So they're all
Now we can't
looking
play no more.
down. Right. And it's kind of in both scenes, it's like a, what do we do now? Oh no. And they're like kind of frozen in like decision paralysis. They don't know what to do next with the dramatic low angle.
See, so what's funny, since you make that comparison, I was like, they are using a lot of framing that's comedic for these kind of moments to break
Yeah.
tension. And so
Yeah.
I was like, one of the examples was that moment with the three of them looking down at the book, and it's very Three Stooges, right? Like, what are we gonna do?
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Like that was a
Yeah.
very comedic framing to have them all squished into that.
Hmm.
And then there was another one that was like a Benny Hill thing of Irving going through the halls, and the camera's just like low, watching him like go from one way. Oh, come back, go this
Yeah.
way. No, this way.
Yeah.
I was like, they're doing a lot of comedy bits with the
Yeah.
framing as well.
I didn't even make that connection, but it is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So again, funny
Hmm.
how just the way you set up a camera and what you hold
Yeah.
on can give you a completely different feel for it. But they did a lot of bits in this episode, and I think that
And
carries over into the next one too.
I was just going to say that makes a lot of sense for the next low angle that I noted in the next
There
episode.
you go.
um, there was another weird thing that I noticed, and I want to know if you noticed it, and
Mm,
can't figure out why.
okay.
I have no explanation for it. But for whatever reason, in a lot of these scenes in episode 4, the ceilings feel lower than they feel in any other episode. And it's got to be purposeful, because
Yeah.
why? But I don't know the meaning. And one scene in particular where it's really tiny is when Irving runs into Bert at the water fountain. And it's also weird because it's like, why is there a water fountain randomly in this hallway? I think we might have talked about that in the
Maybe.
original podcast
Yeah.
episode. And he's putting up a painting above it, and they have their little encounter. But when they pull out and show the wide shot of it, the ceilings are so low and they look
Hmm.
so big in that space. And I don't know why. And then I was waiting to see if that was going to be like a pattern thing across the rest of her episodes, and it's not.
Not just here.
And I
Okay.
don't know that I have noticed it in season 2 at all either. So I just don't know what that was about.
Definitely didn't notice it in season two. I did notice it in some shots in this episode, particularly MDR. But now that you're mentioning this one with Irvin Bird, I'm like, oh, excuse me. Yeah, I can see that there. I don't know why that would be, other than maybe this is a stretch. This is me just reaching. Maybe it is in particular to Irving and Bert. Maybe it's that like their world is becoming more intimate, like less.
Hmm.
Oh, oh.
I mean, I like it.
That's I'm like that's as much of a reach as I can give it. Otherwise, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I really was like, am I tripping, or did the ceilings get lower in this
Why
episode?
do they look huge?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only thing I can think. Now for the other shots where it's like that, I don't know why that would be. Anything else with this section? Oh, the only thing that stood out to me, it's not necessarily a director cinematography thing, but it's just a difference I noticed between season one and season two. I never paid attention to what Cobell had on her wall when she was severed floor manager. And so to
Hmm.
compare between what we know Milchick has, I took note of it. So when Harmony's in there, the walls are still white. We know Milchick painted the walls blue, but the walls are still white. And she only has the Kier head on her little desk, nothing else.
Yeah.
And then the portrait she has behind her is like a 3-panel canvas of storm clouds rolling in.
Hmm.
And I just found that very interesting compared to the very tiny portrait of an iceberg that Milchick has behind him.
Yeah.
So very telling, but also very telling, right? Because Harmony kind of does roll in like a force
Yeah.
unapologetically. She's got all these dimensions to her. You don't really know which part of the storm you're going to get. And Milchick plays small, right? But
Hmm.
an iceberg has a lot going, or has something going on here, but a lot more underneath, right? So I was like, oh, that's interesting. Didn't catch that, but now I'm clocking what you're doing. So that's it. Oh, the other thing was kind of like we've mentioned with season 2 shots, how people are either spread apart in the thirds or they're pushed to one side. I noticed, especially with Irving and Bert, they are very
Hmm.
close together in center frame for
Yes.
2 shots
Yeah.
all the time. And there's a couple of times I do it with some other characters, but there's not as much space being
Yeah.
shifted in weird, awkward ways. It's very much like we're trying to establish intimacy and we're trying to establish like a hearth for these characters. That's it. That's what I got with this one.
Okay. With the next two episodes, it's more of a whole bunch of more of the same, right? Which, I mean, like we predicted, I think when we set out to do this episode, it's like, oh, what are the patterns? Well, the patterns are
The
there.
patterns
We
are the
continue
patterns.
with well, you're right, right. We continue with the dramatic low angles. So for in Grim Barbarity of Optics and Design, this is after Helly's suicide attempt.
Mm-hmm.
So we get Mark's kind eyes, and so this is another, like you were mentioning, a
Yep.
comedically low angle, right? Where she is in the corner of the elevator and we're taking her POV looking
Mm-hmm.
up at him, giving her
Mm-hmm.
the kind eyes. And I was like, oh, there it is
Mm-hmm.
again.
And again, what makes it funny too is you don't want it to be too high up or it's going to be like weird and awkward, like looming, right?
Yeah.
But if you get it
Just,
just above,
yeah.
then it's just like you can do enough of an eye roll up to be like, seriously, all right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. This was more of a like a sound directorial decision, which
Ooh.
was during the birth giving scene for Devin. I was like, it is interesting how they chose to underscore Mark in isolation with the sounds of Devin giving birth.
Yeah.
And it made me think of that scene in Sinners
Mm.
with Delroy Lindo's character where he's reflecting back. Only the funny thing is like that actually is happening or happened to him, and you're getting
Yeah.
audio sounds that underscore the stuff that he's telling, right?
Yeah.
So you're hearing it in the back of his mind as he's describing it. But it made me think of that. But obviously, this is disconnected because obviously Mark wasn't in there watching Devin giving birth. So it's not like he's reflecting
Right.
on what he heard and saw. It's like you're hearing
It's
that
just what
happening
happened.
behind this
Yeah.
other moment that's happening. And I just wonder what the choice was for that.
With that part, I was thinking, I remember this not second watch through, this is like my 50th watch through, Jesus, but watching it most recently, being like, okay, I think I thought, that's your sister. You don't want to be in there while she's giving birth, right? She probably doesn't want you in there. That's why you're sitting outside waiting and you're just hearing it happening. But this time around, I was like, man, this is so sad knowing what we
See
know about how hard they
that part,
tried to
that part.
have a baby. And he probably emotionally just couldn't
I was gonna
handle
say,
it.
and I think that's what made me think of Sinners. It's like, oh, in a way, this is him reflecting, right? Obviously not on Devin and Rickon, but reflecting on the trials of what they went through to try to get a kid
Yeah.
and all the stuff that led to Gemma's disappearance. And so that again, coming off of season 2 and going back and watching that
Hmm.
episode, you're like, oh, okay.
Oh,
So it's
this
not just
episode is
about the
hard.
fact that he lost Gemma, it's also about the fact that they were trying and trying and trying, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he started tapping his foot and singing the blues. No. Different show. What else?
Um, well, so this episode in particular, I think across these episodes I noticed it, but this episode in particular, a lot of like one-sided, unbalanced compositions, and it struck me in a different way than like all of the unbalanced like thirds shots in season 2. I think because there are some of these in season 2, but I think I also noticed a lot of third shots where it was like, here's something in, this like quadrant or whatever, and this is your main focus, but then here is something here, and it was as balanced as unbalanced can be, if that makes sense, versus there were a lot of like kitchenette scenes or scenes just showing a sliver of MDR where it was like, here is it's unbalanced because there's a lot that's hidden by
Mm-hmm.
a wall. And I remember as I was watching this episode, this is the episode where Dylan gives the warning to Mark and Helly as they go off to, search for things. Like, be careful out there. There's a weird
Weird
energy. And I was like,
energy. Yep.
yeah, the composition of these shots, particularly in this episode, but I think across these three shows, there is a weird energy. And there is a weird energy across all three because I think I maybe am getting ahead of myself, but I feel like they gave Aoife kind of the most important episodes to direct in season 1.
Mm.
because each of these episodes is like the catalyst for change within
Yeah.
these characters, right?
Yeah.
We get
That's
Helly's
true.
suicide attempt,
Yep.
and then we get
Get baby goats.
yeah, we get baby goats and the beginning of an opening up of Irving. I think it really starts when he kind of gets in trouble about seeing Irving, and then Mark goes back on it. And then in the next episode, hide and seek, we get the OTC and we get that beginning, that catalyst for Dylan.
Yep.
And
That's true.
it's like a huge, like the arc of these three episodes is a huge turning point, and then it's all go 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 when it goes back to Ben's episodes. But I was like,
Yeah.
huh. I remember when we first talked about Aoife McGardle coming on for episode 4, being like, wow, they trusted her with a really important episode.
Yeah.
But I now watching all three of them again in isolation, I'm like, I feel that way about this whole chunk,
Yeah.
not just episode 4.
Yeah. 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 For sure. Absolutely. Oh, I was gonna say one more comedic-y type of shot that Aoife and Jessica Lee Gagne seem to like is the whip pan,
Oh,
where they used it a couple times. They used it in the last episode when Helly comes storming into Cobell's office with the, paper
yeah,
cutter.
the paper
And it
cutter.
literally is like, boom,
Boom.
swoop. Yeah, like I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that's a funny thing that you usually use in like, especially comedic TV shows. If you've seen The Office, they use a whip pan a lot. And again, it when done right or done well, it can be very funny to make a sudden shift change. And then they do it again in this episode from Milchick to Cobell. And I'm trying to remember what the scene was when it happened. Oh, I think it's when they realize that the
Oh,
innies are going
that they're
to.
going to the
Mm-hmm,
goats, and
mm-hmm.
she's like, are you seeing this?" And
And
he's
he's
like,
like,
"On
I'm on it. Yeah.
it." Yeah, and it's like boom, boom,
Yep.
back and
Yep.
forth because they're in different rooms, but that door between there is open.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So I was like, another kind of haha, like comedic, but not funny, but it's pretty funny. Like
yeah,
the chickens are loose. Like,
yeah.
do you
He's
see
like,
what's going
"Oh
on?
shit."
I got it. Let me go get it. Yeah. So the other things I noticed that were interesting little shot setups with Helly in the bathroom after she goes in there to take the makeup off her neck. She
Yeah.
literally turns her back on herself, which again, I think just symbolizes how she has fully reconciled that her innie and her are not ever, or her innie and her outie are not ever gonna be on the same side of things. So she's like, if
Yeah.
it's F me, it's F you, right? So, but the way they hold on that shot too, and you just see literally like her back facing, and it's almost like seeing the two of them just being at odds with each other, right?
Hmm.
Then the other thing was just the choice to make the hallway lights leading into the baby goat's room motion censored so that it's like step for step
Yeah.
tracking with them. And again, kind of gives a haunting, creepy, like what's coming vibe. It's the one hallway that isn't well lit. And I did notice that Helly, I don't know if I noticed it the first time through, but I did notice that Helly is like, why is this hall like this? Or why is this hall dark? Or something like that. Like she
Yeah.
actually comments on it
She's
after she
like,
gets a
"Where the
little
hell
ways
are we?"
down. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, is there anything else with this one and the next one? I mean, the next one,
Yeah, I actually didn't write anything in particular about the next one because again, I was just like, yeah, I think overall same, you know.
mm-hmm.
um, I think there's some interesting moments in Dylan's closet. I don't know that I have anything new to say about it other than what we have already spoken about
Yeah.
in that actual episode.
Yeah.
Um,
For me, it was just a few things I'll rattle off. The choice to go handheld at the punk show seemed like, again, another perspective shift things happening for Mark, right?
yeah.
Because you get that moment where they're in the crowd, they all start saying like F you Lumen, and Mark actually chimes in, right? So it's like
Yeah.
he's having this moment of realizing, hearing June's lyrics about what happened to Petey, her dad.
Hmm.
And I think it's settling on him like, wait, actually, am I a part of the problem? And it's like that shift. And so I feel like they go, not that they always go handheld when that's happening, but it seems to be a practice, at least for these two.
Yeah.
The other one was more spy shots we're seeing. One of the funnier ones to me was like, and it didn't linger long, but it was like when Grainer showed up at Cobell's house and it's like through the fence hole on her little
Yeah.
porch. It's just like, why?
I was like, why?
He's like, why are you wearing that? Like it was one of those moments. And then the other one that stood out to me was the very end with Mark getting on the phone with Ragabi. And the spy shot looked like it was like from the sky or from a tree or something way above Mark. But what I thought was interesting was that it continued to linger on his back.
Okay.
And you just see him like looking around
Yeah.
and making this phone call, and he never once faces the direction that the camera is coming from. It's always just like
Right.
looking at him from behind.
Yeah.
So again, just kind of this ominous, like, you never know who is watching, and we're not going to tell you if anybody is watching. And then the last one was with the MDR doors. The way they pushed in on it, did it not feel like The Shining to you? Did you get Shining vibes? I got the Shining vibes off of it.
Yeah, actually. Yeah, now that you say
It's
it.
like I was waiting for him to just open up and River of Blood just whooshing out. But it had that same type of oogie effect that that shot from The Shining did. That was all I had on that episode. Otherwise, like you said, it's more of the same. Just some of the choices were really interesting, kind of lingered in the brain.
Yeah. And then just kind of one last overall note that I had, I think, again, they do a great job of making sure that there's nothing that's like crazily different, I would say, except for Chikai Bardo in season 2, which is purposeful, right? It needs to be because
Mm-hmm.
it's Gemma's debut and her backstory. But overall, everything is super cohesive. But I do think Aoife's episodes fit within the whole of season 1 kind of seamlessly, and that's likely because it was Jessica Leigh Gagne
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
across the board, as opposed to in season 2 we get different directors, but we also get different cinematographers.
Right.
Yeah. I would like to see, again, I said this at the top of the episode, but I would really like to see what Jessica Leigh Gagne does if she comes back to direct more, again, because Gemma's episode should have been, was different, rightfully so. Like it needed to be that
Right.
visually different. So maybe that worries me. I wonder if they would only ask her back to
For
direct if
like
there needed to be something like that
distinguishing
again.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, possibly. I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll see. She definitely has a signature thing that she does, but I don't know. I was going to ask you actually, just looking at who's gotten paired off in these first two seasons, and kind of it seems like there's some director cinematographer pairings that work well together, or at least I don't know if
Yeah.
that's by choice or by force, but they've at least established kind of a cohesion. So I wonder, like, do you think it's going to be the same in season 3? Do you think Ben's going to pair off with one of these other cinematogs?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's like, are one of these people going to, take on that role of lead
Right.
DP, or are they just going to continue to rotate through people? I don't know. I'm curious because you know how it be with creative works and people move on to other things. And, I think I was really shocked to not see Aoife McArdle come back for season 2.
Yeah.
I think that's some of the rumored disagreements came on that end too.
Yeah.
So, who knows? Who knows if we'll
Yeah.
see any of these people again?
True. True. Because I was
Or-
wondering, I was like, if Jessica came back, would she have someone else do cinematography for her, or would she just do it for herself again, like she did for Chikai Bardo? That feels like a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen her do interviews about Shikai Bardo and saying that she bit off more than she could chew with doing that. So I would think that she wouldn't make that choice again, but I don't know. I think aside from Chikai Bardo, Attila and the After Hours are probably very high up there for me for season 2. So I would really like to see Uta. And I think when after we watched the After Hours, that's when I was like, I got to the end and I was like, oh, yes. When I saw Uda's name go up there, I was
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yes, I can see that and I like that. But not knowing about David Lanzenberg also being a part of that as a duo, I would like
Right.
to see them do more together for that
Right.
reason.
See, and it's so funny because like I was expecting that, even though I do love the After Hours, I was expecting that. But like Sam Donovan and Susie Lavelle did some interesting stuff that I found more eye catching than I think I was prepared to. Like I thought that
Yeah,
theirs were just going to kind of like glaze over, but I was like, I found myself being very like caught by the different things that they and tricks that they did. And maybe it's the horror movie lover in me
right.
that loves a good mystery and loves a good tension build and that sort of thing. But theirs is a very specific, right,
Mm-hmm.
vibe. So it's
Yeah,
like that's not something you could do throughout. But I definitely
right.
hope they come back and do some episodes in season 3. I'd love to see what they have in season 3 to do.
Yeah, and I mean, I gotta expect that there's gonna be more need for it the further this show goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's gonna continue to get creepier and creepier.
Absolutely. Ooh. Well, guys, that is our director, cinematographer breakdown for the first 2 seasons of Severance, Ben notwithstanding. I liked going back when you're forced to pay attention to stuff.
Yeah.
It's amazing what you realize is going on behind the curtain. It's a very Wizard of Oz type of effect where it's like, oh, it's not just me feeling a kind of way. They are setting the stage for me to feel a kind of way, right? It's
Yes.
all very, very intentional. But anyway, guys, thanks for hanging with us between floors for this episode. Per usual, we would love it if you would follow us on social media. You can follow the handle at the UUR Pod over on Threads, Blue Sky, TikTok, Instagram, Lemonade, and YouTube. We are there hanging out, posting stuff. You can also email us if you have any questions, recommendations, theories, insights at the uurpod at gmail.com. Hit you back from there. And, or, maybe if you just want to tell us about your summer break, going on vacation or doing something, I don't know. Maybe you just want to share with somebody. Sure. And also, we are on Patreon. If you would like to become a patron and help support our podcast and what we're doing, the efforts we're making, the research we're putting in, the rewatches, the subscriptions. You guys, subscriptions ain't free. But if you would like to support us and what we're doing, we would love it if you would consider becoming a patron. You can go to patreon.com/the-UUR-pod. You can check out some of the things we have going on for our membership tier, the Severed Floor. This is where you'll be able to join in with Kali and her second thoughts and what's happening over there.
Yeah.
As I already mentioned, I'll be joining in with some stuff. Oh, it's almost the end of June. I'm almost there.
Whew, we're almost there.
And then I'll have some stuff to contribute there. But Kali's got some fun little tidbits going on. You can check that out along with bonus content, extended episodes, our video episodes, etc. Otherwise, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Please review and rate us favorably. We appreciate it if you like what's going on here. Let us know. Let the interwebs know. That's how we are able to ascend in the rankings so other people can find us and what we're doing. And this is not an ego stroke for us. Like, it's been kind of cool to hear other people be like, I just discovered your podcast and I love what you guys are talking about. And that's what we want. That's why we're doing it. We just want
that's so
to
fun.
get it out there. Exactly.
Also, our next episode will be digging into the Eakins some more. So stick around for that.
See, research, guys. Research.
But yeah, this has been the UUR. And remember, there's weird energy out there.